All right, we have one of the kings of comedy, DJ Hughley's in the house. What's good?
How you doing, Vlad?
I'm good, man.
Good.
I'm good. I'm glad we finally got this
Me
to
too,
happen,
man. It was a little bit of a runaround, but we finally made it happen.
Absolutely. Huge fan of what you do.
Thank you, man. Likewise.
Thank you. I see you're always retweeting some of our stories.
Yeah.
Definitely appreciate it.
Yeah. I think there has to be some kind of a medium that amplifies what's going out there. It's dope.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. So, your point of view is what's getting a lot of attention these days, but I think that your story and how you got, to this point, starting from where you started from, is very important. So I'd like to get into that a little bit.
Okay.
So you grew up in LA.
135th and Avalon, yeah.
Okay. So what was LA like? This is, I guess, the 70s, the 80s?
I would have graduated from high school in '82. So primarily, I say that my growing up years were the '70s, and I learned how, and through the '90s. But I never really knew it was that. I never thought it was that different. I grew up in the inner city. I grew up, like, if you threw a rock from my house, you hit a nigga that lived in Compton. So, like, I lived across Avalon and across. I lived on this side of Avalon, and across that Avalon was Compton. But I never really knew anything was all that different. I only thought, I didn't know that white people lived in Los Angeles until I was watching a game show, and they used to say, we live in L.A., and I go, where? And then I went to UCLA one time, and they said, entering West L.A., and I went, oh, this is where the white people live. I never had, so it was always a very insulated experience. I grew up, in a black neighborhood, and I went to school with black people. So I hadn't ever had a divergent point of view or experience.
Yeah. Now you got involved in gangs when you were younger.
But I think it's really, I got involved with cats who lived in the same neighborhood and who ran the same streets I did and believed what I did. And as a young boy, you're looking for acceptance for any way you can get it. And although I'm not proud of what happened, or I'm not proud of my experiences, I learned a lot from them that I think is invaluable for me in terms of the way I see the world.
So from what I read, you were affiliated with the Bloods at one point.
Yeah, 135th and Avalon, 5s. 135th and Avalon, neighborhood called the 135s. It was where I grew up. The name of my production is 5 Times. The company is 5 Times Productions. Not for any affiliation with the neighborhood, but for affiliation with the cats, who I thought were the clearest, most honest, bravest human beings I've ever met, and not in a glorified way. I think that they just were men to me, and although I didn't, I would come to later on understand that the things they were doing were illegal. They never struck me as particularly immoral. Like, I know a lot of things are immoral, but legal, and I know things that are legal but not immoral. So I think they were, some of the best human beings I've ever met.
No, absolutely. Now, at one point, your cousin got killed.
Sure. And that was difficult because he grew up, he was a Hoover, 5'9" Hoover, and I was from the 5s, and he was one of my favorite cousins, and when he died, they wouldn't let me go to the funeral, which I didn't understand. But Bloods had killed my cousin, so I knew that later on I would come to realize that me being there wouldn't have been a great thing. To me, he was just my family. But it was at that point I realized that I knew I didn't have it in me to take human life, and it just seemed brutal to me, and it seemed that I knew that wasn't in my thing. I remember being a kid and feeling so bad for the cats around me and not even knowing why. I used to feel so sorry for them, even they had the money and the brides and the cars and they were cool and they could do, but I always felt bad for them, and later on I would realize it was because I knew I would see things in the world that they never would. So that was, I guess, my first real concentrated look at empathy.
After losing your cousin to that situation, was that when you just basically said, okay, I'm done with the whole gang thing?
Yeah. I know it wasn't in my, I didn't have that in my spirit to just be so wantonly brutal and just take people away from their loved ones. That just wasn't in my thing. I realized that was something that was about, and I wasn't, and so I wanted to be something else. I wasn't sure what it would be, but I knew it wasn't going to be that.
Now, just to rewind for a second, when you talk about that time frame, the 70s going to the 80s, that's right when crack was hitting LA.
Yeah.
Like, how big of a difference did you see in your community?
Well,
when that hit?
I think that after it was, I remember it was a couple of things. Once I remember we would watch kung fu movies, and everybody tried to do kung fu. And after Scarface, everybody tried to be a dope dealer. Like it was just, you saw shit. Like it was first it was Shaft, everybody wanted to be that. Then it was kung fu, everybody wanted to do that, and then it was Scarface. My neighborhood changed overnight. It was an entirely different place.
Yeah. What do you think was the craziest thing that you saw, like as you saw these changes taking place?
Well, I think, obviously people dying, people getting shot up. But the craziest thing I saw was I remember the drive-by shootings didn't get a lot of notoriety till a young Asian girl got shot at UCLA. And then you heard drive-bys all the time. For us, it was just niggas shooting out of cars. But then all of a sudden it made the news and it became this thing that was publicized. To me, and also I was kind of starting comedy at that time. So, you was always around the cats that was doing it, whether it was the police trying to get them or the cats who was hustling or the chicks that was with the cats who was hustling. So it was LA was a whole different kind of animal. So it was an interesting time to kind of grow up and try to be a comedian and try to be a husband, and so it was a time that I look back on and wonder how it all came together.
Right, because at one point you got kicked out of school.
I got kicked out of school a couple of times. I got kicked out of Gardena. Then I went to Gardena High. Then I went to Locke High. I got kicked out of there. Then I got to San Pedro High. I got kicked out of there. And I ended up going to Gardena High Adult School. And I got kicked out of there. So I ended up getting my GED from Lawndale High Adult School. So I'm a proud member of the alumni of the graduating class of 1988 Lawndale GED class. And I was the valedictorian, by the way.
So what were you doing at these schools to get you kicked out over and over again?
Fighting. I was fighting. I got kicked out of Gardena for a fight. I got kicked out of Locke because I was a blood and I wore that Vidal Sassoon shirt to school, the third day of school. And I'm standing by the bus stop and all these niggas start hitting the fence. And I was like, somebody about to get their ass whooped. And I realized it was me. So I ran. I run down the street. I duck into this, I think it was a liquor store right on Imperial and Avalon. I duck into the street, and it was Koreans that owned the liquor store, and they're like, "You gonna have to get out, or we're gonna leave." And I'm like, "Bitch, you can call the police. I'm not going nowhere, right?" So all these people was outside, and my father happened to walk in, getting ready to buy some beer and a little bit of whiskey, and I said, "Daddy, what are you doing here?" He said, "Nigga, come on," and we walked back out. And went. It was like I was like, "How am I gonna get out here?" And all of a sudden, my old man he showed up. And so we walked out, and I didn't go back to Locke anymore. I went to San Pedro, got kicked out for a fight, at Gardena High Adult School. So many years later, when I tried to actually be a police officer, I got my GED from London.
Okay, you wanted to be a cop at one point.
I did. And I was actually in the police academy for like a week. Then I got shin splints, yeah. So, because I wanted to get married, and I knew I didn't, so all you had to do was you could get a high school diploma or or equivalent, which was a GED. And so I took the GED so I could get married. And I ended up telling my old lady, I said, if I get accepted to the police academy, I'll marry you. And so I got accepted to the police academy, and then got kicked out, left, and started working at the LA Times and Greyhound. And my wife I still had to get married because I promised her. So I never asked her to marry me. Just the police letters, just the acceptance of the police academy caused me to get married.
Okay, and you were how old at the time?
Oh, 20, 21.
20.
Yeah.
Okay, pretty young to get married.
Yeah, pretty young.
Up to this point, was comedy something you always wanted to do as a kid, or how did it?
Well, no. I used to know like all the cats who was hustlers and athletes. So they could, or they're big, strong cats, so they could get brides doing that way. But all I could do was make people laugh. So I'd always, been the guy, like we used to call it bagging. So I would talk about somebody's mama or argue, so it was always like that. But I remember specifically the cats, they had a barbershop. They used to do taxes, and they would sell VCRs, and they was just hustlers, right? So they were also concert promoters. So they said, I would talk shit in the barbershops. They said, if you think you're so funny, we doing a concert with Robin Harris and Blue Magic at this joint called the Turtle Experience, and you come up there and we'll let you do it. And so they didn't pay me, but all the dudes from the barbershop walked me to the stage like they were my bodyguards, and I went on stage, and I knew that was what I was gonna do for the rest of my life.
So you killed it your first time?
No. I said I knew that's gonna do for the rest of No, I didn't have any material. All I did was talk shit. I just talked about people, and that was pretty much it. And so, but I understood, like, all those moments when I felt sympathy for somebody, when I thought, oh, I feel bad for these cats. I wondered, and I knew I would be something. At that moment, I knew exactly what it would be.
Okay. And you were how old?
21, 22.
Okay, so 21, 22, you just got married.
Right.
Well, I guess you're working for the LA Times.
I was working for the LA Times.
$4 an hour?
Yeah. Well, yeah, when I got married, I was making like the minimum wage. And my wife laughs about this, but for 3 months, she made more money than me. She made $625. So I made $475. She makes $625. And I said, I ain't going to have no woman making more money than me. So I started working hard at the Times, and I got a promotion to a detail clerk. Then I got a promotion to an assistant manager and a manager. And then I was a circulation manager in Ventura County. So and I did all that while I was trying to get a comedy career and take care of a family and purchase a home. So it was turbulent.
You start hustling in the comedy circuit.
Right.
So what starts to happen?
So you would go to the Comedy Act Theater where Robin Harris was the host, and you would get on there. You would go to Maverick Flats. J. Anthony Brown would let you on and give you $10, and you get fried chicken. You could have all the fried chicken and non-alcoholic beverages you could have. You used to be able to work at the Golden Tail when they were cleaning up drinks. So in California, all the drinks had to be on LA. All the drinks had to be off the floor at 2. But it was a dance club, so between 1:45 and 2, between 1:30 and 2, they put comedians up where they was cleaning the drinks. And if you was funny, they gave you $100. So I would always go down there at the last minute and make $100. And so that was kind of my thing. But the real thing in LA happened for me when a cat named T.K. Kirkland, who hosted the Birdland West, he went on tour with NWA. That big tour from the movie, they went on that tour, and he left it to me. He left the Birdland West to me. And he was gone, and by the time they came back, the cat named Gregory Sanders that had the joint kept me. And so I had the Birdland West, and I was still working. And then Robin Harris passed on, and Louis Dix came through, and Joe Torre came through, and they got busy, so I got that club. And then I got a club called Zeno's on Century. So I would make $350 on Tuesday, at the club. Then I would make $750 at the club at the Comedy Act Theater for that day, and then I would make another $1,000 for the Golden Tail for Zeno. So before you knew it, I was making enough, $2,000 a week doing comedy.
Okay, so you're making more money doing comedy than your LA Times gig.
Right. But it wasn't stable, and I had a wife and kids and benefits and all that kind of stuff. But how I left the LA Times is I passed out on stage at the Comedy Act Theater. They took me off work. Joe Torre, Jamie Foxx drove me to the hospital in Torrance, and the doctor said, "You're exhausted. You're not getting your REM sleep." So they took me off work for 6 weeks, and eventually I kept going off work, but they wouldn't let me come back to work because I wasn't rested, because I was still working, and I was getting all of my money from the LA Times. And a cat named Ron Wolf kept my benefits alive for a year, and gave me a discretionary bonus, and he said, "Don't come back, you're supposed to do something else." And that cat later on lost his job and his woman behind doing that for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you finally leave your stable job.
Sure.
Right? Now you bought a house.
I had bought a house, yeah.
Ain't nothing worse than that mortgage.
Right. Right.
That
and a woman who won't work, and keep getting knocked up. I'm like, what the fuck are you? She would always be pregnant. But the funny thing about it is, we had a little savings. I would hustle, but I had 3 kids and a mortgage, and so shit got tight. And I remember my manager was a cat named Tony Spires at the time. He has this thing called the Barry Black Comedy Competition. He was my manager. And he said he couldn't get me an audition to the HBO. They did those HBO 30-minute specials. So they did it at this place called the Townhouse. He couldn't give me an audition, but he said, you can host. So I said, fuck it, I'll host. So it was J. Anthony Brown and Eddie Griffin and Jamie Foxx. They were all auditioning for HBO specials. And I would come in, do 10 minutes, bring somebody up. Do 10 minutes, bring somebody else on. Do 10 minutes, bring somebody else on. I remember one, because I knew we needed the money. I wasn't even worried about the special. I knew it came with 30 grand and that could be a lick for us. So at the end of the night, the people from HBO said, you didn't have an audition, but we're giving you a special. And all I said was, how much is that? And so they gave me 30 grand, and that was really kind of how it, that's all I've ever done since comedy, since that one thing.
Okay, so then you got an HBO comedy special.
I got the HBO half-hour special, and I was doing BET's Comic View at the time. I got BET's Comic View, which kind of was my first regular ascension into, a lot of black people's household, but I was hosting a fashion show that Cheryl Lee Rife and Tommy Davidson were hosting, they were hosting. I was the warm-up for that. And every time, knowing BET, and they were even more BET back then, the cameras kept going down. It was all kind of technical problems, and I kept, doing jokes. And so it was like 4 hours it took, and I was always doing jokes. And so Bob Johnson, who owned it, flew me out to D.C. and he said he wanted to do this thing called Comic View, and would I do it? And I said, yeah.
Okay, and you were the host?
I was the host for 2 years.
Okay, so now you got real income coming in
Right.
from the comedy.
Mm-hmm.
What started changing your life once that started happening?
For me, I was so scared. I was always the first time I knew that something had it gotten different is my wife wanted a car. So we go down, her car, she was driving a Hyundai. So my wife, it was time to get her a car, so we go down, and she wanted a Volvo, and I wasn't gonna tell her she couldn't have it, so we go down to this Volvo dealer, and they tell me how much it is, and I go, okay. And so she drives a Volvo, and I drive a Jetta, and so we had a house in Baldwin Hills, she had a Volvo, and I had a Jetta, and I was doing, my local stuff and BET, and I would also do warm-ups for the Fresh Prince. So it was nice.
Then you end up getting your own sitcom.
It was a long time before I got my sitcom. I did
Okay,
a thing called
so real quick, the Kings of Comedy, was that before or after the sitcom?
way after the sitcom. Well, what happened was I used to not be able to. So I would go out on the road, and the most money I ever made on the road opening for somebody was I think Martin Lawrence was playing the Palladium, and he needed a warm-up act. He needed an opening act. At the end of the night, I go in there and talk to Martin. We'd always been cool, and Martin gave me $2,000 cash. He has this dude hand me $2,000 cash, and I go out the room and I start crying. I go, wow, and I get home and I go, baby, Martin gave me $2,000 cash, because it was, everything was $400 here and $1,000 here. It was real piecemeal, and so that was my thing. And my manager, who's still my manager, Dave Becky and Michael Rosenberg, they were doing this thing called where CBS or NBC let you host these, like, they had a series of rotating hosts for this late night show they used to do called Later. And everybody would say, we can't understand him, he doesn't speak well, he talks too fast, nobody knew him, nobody knew what he did, and we think he's funny, but we can't. So Dave Becky takes me in for a meeting to talk to these people. And by this time, I had just bought a house in the Valley. So when I'm talking to these people, I had to go into a meeting with a bunch of white people just to show I could talk, like I wasn't an idiot. And so Dave Becky, I'm telling them my stories. And after the meeting, I said, Dave, did I get it later? He said, fuck that, I'm gonna get you a sitcom. A week later, I did a set at the Laugh Factory, meet with these cats from Greenblatt and Jan Larry. They gave me a sitcom.
The Hughleys.
The Hughley.
How did it feel? Okay, what network was it on?
It was on. Well, it was Greenblatt and Jan Larry did it. So my first meeting with Dave, and I had just signed with a new agency. So I got an agent after I did the Laugh Factory. Jamie Masada gave me a spot at the Laugh Factory. It was an industry showcase. I got an agent. They, a week later, take me out. I go on these meetings. I went to CBS, ABC, NBC, and Green Blanc Larry, and I went to them first, and every one of them made an offer. So when I'm leaving my last meeting, Dave Becky calls me. He said they made an offer. Green Blanc Larry made you an offer, and I said, what is it? He said $1 million, and I pull over. Because, you know, I had them big old, and I pull over and I start crying again. And so we go to Green Blanc Larry, and we go to ABC, and they put us on.
So now you have a sitcom
Right.
on one of the major networks
Right.
with your name in
Yep,
the sitcom.
Right. And the crazy thing is, I got kicked out of school a lot in addition to fighting all the time because I would act up in school because I couldn't read that well. So every time they would ask me a question or got put on the spot, I would make jokes or do something silly because I didn't read that well. And anytime I go on an audition, I would always never go on the script. And so they people thought I was a dummy. And what it was, I just wasn't a good reader. So when I got the show, it was the first time when somebody would go, that was wrong, or you didn't do it like the script was, like it was written on the script, and I go, it's that way now. Like I got to go, fuck it, I want that in now. So it was the first time I couldn't be wrong. So it changed the way I saw things and the way I interacted and the way how much more comfortable I was, and it really kind of set me off into kind of this path of being my own kind of individual and saying things the way I meant it and not necessarily flinching when people disagree.
Well, and the show ran for 4 seasons.
4 seasons, right.
I mean, that's an incredible accomplishment right there.
Well, you know what? It felt great because about 2 years in, I get this call from a cat named Walter Latham and Cedric and Sid and Steve and Bernie were going on this tour called The Kings of Comedy, but he said he needed another guy, so I think one of them was gone for Houston. They played a gig in Houston. And they said, well, come on in, we'll give you some bread, you come in and play the gig. I thought, okay, I'll play the gig. And I killed. So they asked me to do it again. Another day, somebody missed, I did it again. So I killed again. So they said, we're gonna start a tour, we're gonna call it The Kings of Comedy. Because at that time, they were just going out, they hadn't called it necessarily anything. So we went on it was called The Kings of Comedy, everybody got favorite nations. We start this 2-year tour that culminates into the Kings of Comedy movie.
2-year tour.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was like the most successful comedy tour ever at the time?
It was the most, at the time, and the highest grossing documentary and the biggest comedy film ever. So, until Kevin Hart. So, fuck him now. But yeah, but until him, yes. It really was. Yes.
At one point, you started getting into political commentary.
I had never been, even if you watch what I was doing before, I never had been, different. I think that people became more focused on the political arena. So I think that I had always kind of had my perspective, but it just wasn't necessarily that popular. But I think that as the political arena morphed into the pop culture arena, I think that they morphed into a thing and it became more palatable to people.
Well, right, because at one point you had a show on CNN
Right.
called DJ Hughley
Right.
Breaks the News.
And that did $1 million. That did 1 million people a weekend until the stock market crashed. And I lived in LA and I had to go to New York. And I would be home 12 hours a week. So my family lived in New York, LA, and I lived in New York. The apartment I actually still have right now. And I would go back and forth and do the gig here at the CNN building here, and I would still fly and do my weekend gigs. And on Monday, I would fly home, see my family, go back out. So when the economy crashed, they'd always promised me that we could go to LA, but the economy crashed and we couldn't do it because it was just fiscally irresponsible for them. So we just decided, I said, if I can't do it from LA, then I can't do it anymore. And they said, okay.
Okay. You know, because I've talked to a lot of black comedians on Vlad TV, and the one thing that I heard on a few different occasions, like Dion Cole, we talked about this recently, was that
I don't know where this is coming from and why this happens, but they give one comic a shot, one black comic at a time a shot. Like they would not do another movie, another big blockbuster movie with no other comedian. Studios go, hey, we need this guy, and there's nothing. I love Kevin to death. That's my guy all day long. And this is his time, definitely. But and each comic gets that moment where I remember it was just Martin all the time,
Right.
and it was like Will Smith. It was Will Smith all the time. Like
Will Smith's not as well. I mean, I guess you could
not
say
comedian,
he's a
but I'm
comedian.
talking about giving like a black person its moment at the time. But I understand what you're saying as far as comic.
Sure, I would agree, and I think that's because they only have one marketing machine that can only work at one black comedian at a time, and I think, I mean, I don't know that it's ever been any different. It was never, I mean, it was Dick Gregory, and then it was Red Fox, and then it was Bill Cosby, and then or Eddie Murphy, and then Bill Cosby, so then Martin, then Chris. I mean, so it's never. There's never like an abundant an amount of black comics. I don't know why that is. I think it's because they can't walk and chew gum at the same time. But that obviously is, I think, a phenomenon that seems to replicate itself often.
Right, because when Def Comedy Jam was
Sure.
doing this thing, and you were part of that as well.
Yeah.
You were seeing the launching of so many legendary comics,
Sure.
like every week.
Every week.
And like these guys all became superstars. I mean,
Yeah.
not all, but like a bunch of them became superstars,
Right.
from Dave Chappelle to
Right.
Chris Tucker
Right.
to so forth. But yet, you fast forward to today, you don't really see that type of launching.
Well, I think Def Jam launched a lot of people. I don't know anybody who was a star on Def Jam that's still not working today. That's still, I mean, so I don't know anybody who was a star on Def Jam who's not working today unless they did have chosen not to. I mean, that was an indelible, there was an indelible imprint in a lot of people's psyche. And that begot Kings of Comedy. And that begot, I mean, before that it was Michael Williams at the Comedy Act Theater, which kind of started the whole thing. And I just think he didn't capitalize on it. But that was the first time so many people who had been denied access. I remember the first time I played the Improv at a joint I'm getting ready to play again right now. They only made a door deal. They said, we're not going to give you a guarantee. We'll give you a couple of grand for you to come in and buy tickets, and you can have 90% of the door. And I played this gig, and they charged $35 a ticket. And I played this gig and sold out 9 shows. So at the end of the night, I'm drinking, counting up all the money. And for the first 3 years, when I would go back to that joint, that was the same thing. You couldn't even get a guarantee. I played a gig at in Raleigh, and they would make you sign a waiver that said you wouldn't talk about white people. So they even when Def Jam was at the height of its popularity, they would always make you do things. They would always cubbyhole you. So it went from not being accepted in the mainstream comedy clubs to really the life's blood of mainstream comedy clubs right now.
Wait, so you couldn't talk about white people on Def Comedy Jam?
Well, no, it was a club I played in Raleigh, North Carolina, and the club owner knew we were Def Jam acts, and so that would be the thing that he said. And even that was 2 shows on a Sunday night, or you would get 2 shows on a Tuesday or Wednesday, but they never gave you the Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. So the first time I ever got that was where they gave me $2,000 and said you can have 90% of the door, and they charged $35 just in case. And so it ended up being where all of a sudden we started breaking down barriers and being able to play the same clubs as large mainstream white acts could.
That's what's up. So you started doing radio at one point.
I did radio. I did radio in LA this whole time, right? And so
The whole time.
Stevie Wonder. I used to do KJLH, and I got fired because I said, do you think this place would be this raggedy if Stevie Wonder could see? And 30 minutes later, it felt like 30 minutes later, he was down there and they fired me on the Stevie Wonder's fired me 3 times from 3 different things.
Okay.
He's fired me 3 times.
You had a situation when Bill Cosby called in.
Sure.
Can you talk about that?
Well, I was doing Kiss FM here. Right after CNN, I was doing Kiss FM. I was doing the morning show. Bill Cosby had called in to promote a gig I think he was having in Connecticut or Pennsylvania, and I was like, Bill don't like me, and I don't particularly care for him. So I'm not gonna, I'll let you guys do the interviews for pre-tape. And so a girl named Jackie Reed and a cat named Steve Wilson, who were my co-hosts, started interviewing me. But he was such a dick. Like for 5 minutes, he's being such a dick. I was like, Mr. Cosby, what is it you like for us to know? He said, who is this? I said, this is D.L. Hughley. You say nigger, and I don't like your comedy. And he went in, and I was like, with all due respect, Mr. Cosby, I say nigger, but no co-ed has ever woke up drug with her drawers on backwards. And we go back and forth and back and forth. I said, I respect, he said, you could be my son. I said, but I'm not. And I said, everything you are because of your experiences, and I appreciate that, but you're not going to denigrate what I've been through. And I said, no one has ever, out of all the words people have ever said to me, no one's ever said rape. No one's ever said, we had this argument, right? And so I worked Hot 107, Kiss FM, was owned by Emmys. Bill Cosby, like, that tape will never air. This is a true story. He said, that tape is not going to air. And I said, the fuck it ain't. And 10 minutes later, all the people from Emmys came down, Emmys Communications, took the tape, made sure nobody had a copy of it, said if this airs, nobody in here will work in radio again. So I know that cat had the power to make people do shit like that.
This was 2009, right?
2009.
So this is way before Hannibal Buress.
But even before that, even if you read
it.
Time and Newsweek, in the very back of the paper, it talked about all these rape allegations. I grew up in L.A. and did warm up for a lot of those shows. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew it. Like Cliff Huxtable is innocent, but Bill Cosby fucked every one of them girls. But the character is innocent. The dude ain't. And I don't even think that cats like that thought it was necessarily a wrong thing to do. They just kind of thought it's what you did. You gave some people dope and they did this. They knew what the deal was. So I wasn't one of those cats who believed he was innocent just because he was funny.
So what did you specifically hear? Did you ever have like one of the girls approach you and tell you about the situation?
Yes. It was always in the like, I'll never forget, I ain't gonna say this cat's name, but when they were doing either the it was a show that came out, Different World. It was a cat who was a stage manager there, and they had let him direct one of the shows. He got to direct one of those shows, but he was a stage manager, and he was late. And that man made that other one black Bill Cosby made that black man sit down there like he was a child on the floor, like a child. I was like, this nigga, what is this shit right here? Made him do that in front of me. So I've never had this kind of image that was kind of inundated with the idea that because he was a staggeringly talented cat that he wasn't incapable of doing some of the shit people accuse him of.
Well, I mean, Bill Cosby's always seemed to have like sort of a beef with a lot of other black comedians.
Bill Cosby tried to. This is what people don't understand. When people say that you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Bill Cosby, if Bill Cosby had owned NBC, if Bill Cosby, he sat on the board of Warner Brothers, Time Warner, he tried to stop HBO from happening. He hated it. So all the comics you know, love, and respect, from the Chappelles to the Martins to the Tuckers to the Def Jam to the Kings of Comedy, he tried to stop from happening. That's just true. I'm not trying to assail his character. That's absolutely true. He did not want it to happen. He didn't appreciate like all those calls when he would call Bill Cosby, Martin Lawrence, or he would call Eddie Murphy, or he would call Will Smith and tell him how to do that comedy. That's how he was.
Why do you think that was?
I just think he saw comedy in a certain way, and if you did it differently, he didn't appreciate it.
Right, because the thing about Bill is that he did what you would call clean comedy. Like his, Bill
Cosby
himself, which is considered a classic stand-up, had no swearing.
I always thought it was
forth.
hypocritical that your comedy is clean, but your life ain't. I would that's so. You say nigga, yeah, I say nigga, but I got a woman and kids and I don't drug bras. What the fuck are you talking about? Our sliding scales of morality are just ironic to me. You work clean, you don't live that way. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. I mean, when you look at 2017 and what's happening now, like when you look at his whole legacy, and I mean, you can't deny the legacy of Bill Cosby.
No, listen,
and what he's done.
President Obama, there are two indisputable things that happened, three indisputable things that happened. The median income of black people rose because they saw him and they saw a different world and they went to college on a great scale. And it never happened before. Black women now are the most educated segment of our society. They went to these traditionally black colleges. They majored. Now they're the most entrepreneurial, the most educated. So I don't think President Obama is president without Bill Cosby. I think that that's absolutely true. But you can be both profane.
Wait. You said that there would not be an Obama.
I don't think that. I think that Bill Cosby showed America that they could have a black father. So if they could have a black father, they could have a black leader. I think he set the table for Barack Obama. I do not think that he would exist. I think that Bill Cosby was a precursor for a lot of the advancements that black people have made, and no one can deny that. But he raped a lot of brothers. I don't think those are music. Like Lucifer, when he was heaven, he was God's most beautiful angel and the minister of music. If you could fuck up in heaven, you can fuck up in Harlem. That's the way it goes.
Okay. When you look at 2017, what's
Sure.
happening now? Everything's coming to light.
Sure.
Everything's coming to light. There was a mistrial, I guess, that happened, but he's
Right.
still facing charges.
Well, I didn't think he would go to jail. I never thought he would go to jail. Like for me, even though I believe he did a lot of that shit, I couldn't send him to jail. I couldn't. Because I think that people waited too long. I think there were too many things that you know, a jury is supposed to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt. And there would have been things that would have been unable to convince me. And I think there were a lot of things. I think that the fact that, you know, people loved Bill Cosby, that people remembered him, he's a fond memory in their life. The fact that the first victim looked like Colin Kaepernick. I think that there were a lot of things that were things that people couldn't get past.
You've always been very outspoken in everything you said.
I don't know that I'm outspoken. I think that I tell you, I think I try to be as clear as possible.
When Debbie Reynolds died,
Yeah.
a day after her daughter,
Sure.
you went on Twitter, and I looked, and the tweet is still there. You never,
Why
never
would I?
took it down. You know,
I said that
there's
black
no apology.
people don't die because their kids do. We are born. Black people don't die because black women don't die because their kids do. They get they say God don't put more than you can bear. You know how many times I know a friend of mine. He's a great comic. His mother lost her husband, lost one of her other sons, and lost her other son, all within the same 10-year period. That woman black people ain't gonna die because our kids do. We'll be sad. We'll get you a t-shirt that say remember LaJohn, but we ain't going nowhere. And it wasn't an assessment on somebody else. I tell jokes, sometimes people get them, sometimes they don't. I don't necessarily care what the affect is.
No, I feel you. You said something about Kendall Jenner. Like,
Yeah.
remember there was the whole Pepsi
Yeah.
thing that happened, and then it was Kendall giving the Pepsi to the cop.
Well, I just, even the whole, like the Bruce Jenner thing, people got upset about. I mean, look here, man. I do not, I mean, the whole 2-hour thing to tell people that you're going to change is, look, I was like, I remember the 2-hour press conference on ABC. I'm like, this man ain't been a woman 5 minutes. He already talking a lot. Like, I remember this whole move. At the time, they were telling me that Caitlyn Jenner was beautiful. There was a man that became a woman. They were telling me Serena Williams wasn't. They were telling me that she wasn't. Caitlyn Jenner, is she beautiful to me? No, she's not. She's not. And I drink. I'm fucked up. She looked like Miss Doubtfire to me. She does. Like the girl Laverne Cox, she looked like she went for the premium package. Caitlyn Jenner just got his Adam's apple knocked back. And I said that joke and people got upset. It's like, to me, like, I think that there are absolute truths. Like, I am a liberal. You can call yourself a woman, and I will call you what you want, but eventually a doctor gonna tell you need a prostate examination. And you can wear a sundress when you go, but you're still getting a finger in your ass. So, look, Mrs. Jenner, I don't want to offend you, but can you move your balls? Listen, I'm not trying to be politically incorrect, but cough. It's silly to me. These things are, and I think comedy has to be unflinching.
Well, right, because, and I've talked about this before. When you look at the comedy of like the 80s, that, like, for example, Eddie Murphy was doing.
Right.
You can't do that comedy these days without a whole bunch of apologies and losing shows.
I never
and so
got
forth.
that. Like I remember we were doing the radio show and they had They said that they were gonna the Boy Scouts of America was taking transgender scouts. Okay, I'm a liberal. Dig it. I dig it. I get it. But that's a heavy thing to put. When you a scout, you 10 to 14 years old. That's a heavy trip to put on a little boy. You go on your first camping trip and you wonder why Chuck got his period. Like, Scoutmaster Chumpson, Chuck's been shot. Does he need supplies? No, Chuck needs a tampon. Look, from now on, our camping trips will be on the 29th of the month. So I think that there are things that are so fun. What's going on with this whole white supremacist thing. It makes me laugh. Like I heard a white supremacist say that we built America. No, motherfucker, you handed out the work assignments. like when white people had America to themselves, they bought niggas in because they didn't want to work. It was never, like white people went, I don't want to do all this shit. Who can I get to do it for me where I get to claim credit for it? Like white people have never, they didn't build this country. They handed out the work assignments. All right, niggas, you got the cotton. Chinese, you got the railroads. And somebody get those Irish out of the bar. These tunnels ain't gonna dig themselves. So I think that those things are hilarious to me. I think that the problem in America we're having right now is that people read the brochure and America doesn't like it. That whole Emma Lazarus on the Statue of Liberty, give me your tired, your poor, the wretched refuge of your teeming shores. They came. If you don't want them to come, put except for niggas. You should say except for niggas and Mexicans, but you don't. Like when they say stuff, you should say what you mean. Like when they say in America you can work hard and be anything you want to be. You know, nobody works harder than poor people. You know what poor people get to be when they work hard? Here tomorrow. That's the fuck they get to be. They get to go to work tomorrow. So we make these, like this whole, whether we should take Confederate monuments down or not, these dualities of arguments are ironic to me. Like you can't say that slavery's our original sin, the America's original sin, but then you build monuments to the people who perpetrated it.
Right. Well, you know, the thing about these monuments that I never realized, I was talking to a friend of mine about this the other day. She was telling me how a lot of those monuments didn't go up during the Civil War. They came
none
out
of them
afterwards during the Jim Crow times to kind of scare black people.
Jim Crow and civil rights. Listen, you building a monument to motherfuckers that lost. You getting every time you see one of them is a motherfucker whose way of life, whose ideas, whose school of thought was defeated. I don't want to be reminded of the losses. When they do that 30 for 30 with the Lakers and the Celtics and the Lakers lose, I can't even watch that shit because I don't want to see them lose. So it's a testament to losers, and it's ironic that people would argue over that. To me, that whole idea, like the southern region of the United States of America, we should sell it back. We should sell it back. We should.
To who? Mexico?
We can sell it to China. They buy everything. They buy old Jordans. They buy everything. I'm telling you, man, look, how is it that a region of the country that's a solid block of poverty, this is not just me, get to decide who the fucking leader of the free world is? You educationally, you're behind. Financially, you have failed educationally and financially, but you're deciding the future of the country. Like, people in America, the problem in America, we're two things. Some people want to be the Jetsons, and some people want to do the Flintstones. But the Flintstones are fucking in charge of the country.
Okay. Did you see Irv Gotti's explanation for what's
about
going
the
on in
Kardashians?
terms of nationalism?
Yeah, we talked about the Kardashians?
Right. His theory is that because the Kardashian girls, who are considered the epitome of beauty in America right now, they're fucking a bunch of black rappers. That's getting all the white people upset and causing all these feelings.
I think that's a silly notion. But what happened to the niggas got hung before the Kardashians? What happened to all the niggas that died before Twitter? Before social media? Before a sex tape? There was always this hate. Like, there's always these simplistic arguments. Like when I hear people go, well, you black people say nigga, and so we say it. You say it in hip-hop culture all the time. Nigga's been the American lexicon since the early 1600s. Hip-hop been around since 1973. What came first, nigga or the Sugar Hill Gang? Mark Twain or Grandmaster Flash? We make these nonsensical arguments. And to me, it's a bunch of angry white people. If you're broke and white in America, you have wasted your whiteness. You should put it on eBay and sell it to some niggas who could use it. How did you blow a 400-year head start? That's the fuck I don't understand.
When people really say get over slavery, I don't think people realize that slavery has been part of America longer than it hasn't been part of America.
How the fuck can you say get over slavery, but you want to keep the monuments of it? You want me to get over slavery, you just want to remind me of it. Get over slavery, but I want to keep the statues. That's like if I'm in a relationship with a woman and I've been abusive, and we say we're going to work it out, but I keep all the things that remind her of how abusive I was. I keep the bandages, I keep the police report, I keep a photo album. Look, remember when I used to do, how the fuck can we move on?
Well, Charles Barkley spoke about the whole
Charles
money
Barkley,
thing. He said
how
that
the dude, like, the one thing about Charles Barkley, how you gonna be a spokesperson and you don't know how to spoke? That's the fuck I'm talking about. I don't understand. You can't say terrible and be a leader to me. Like, look, I got a GED. Motherfucker, you went to college. You went to college. If you went to college and still say terrible, you fucked up.
Well, you said that Trump is a product of a white supremacist family.
Let me tell you something. Clearly, Trump's father, 1927, got busted at a Klan riot. The 1970s, he was sued by the federal government under Republicans for refusing to rent to black people and people of color. Settled. In the 80s, he tried to fire a black accountant from his casinos because he thought a Jew should be in charge of that. Then we had the Central Park 5. Then we had the whole birther thing. Then what he said about Mexicans. Then what he said about immigrants. Then what he said about the Mexican judge. So when did he stop being a racist? When did it happen? Donald Trump is a mediocre white cat at best. What he did, he proves succinctly that a white man's luck is not as good as a Harvard man's education to a black man's Harvard education in America. He's nowhere intellectually, morally, philosophically, anywhere on the plane with Obama. But he happens to be a fat white dude, so people accept it.
Well, how did you feel when, for example, Steve Harvey, who you've worked with closely, went to go visit Obama?
I think that Steve, I never faulted Steve. I think Steve is a good friend of mine. I think Steve, I can't question his motives, but I can always question Trump motives. To Trump, black people are photo ops. And Omarosa is no more than a nigger wrangler. I'm going to get pictures of these people, and what that does is create the optical illusion that I'm actually fair. Black people hang in his lobby, but they ain't in his cabinet. His administration, he's trying to roll back affirmative action in colleges. He is trying to make it hard. He reduced the amount of money that he gave to black colleges. He talks about the inner city, but his answer to them was to send in more police. He wants to roll back marijuana, make it harder, make it easier to jail people for marijuana. He wants to roll back mandatory prison sentences. He wants to open up private prisons. How the fuck is that any different? What did he take pictures of black people for? If you wanted pictures of black people, in your mind, they should be in a mug book.
Yeah, I mean, after the whole Charlottesville thing, he lamented the loss of the Confederate statues.
Let me tell you something. What he's saying is that there was guilt, responsibility on both sides for the violence. That's saying that Heather Heyer is responsible for her death as the Nazi who killed her.
Right.
That's making the point. So Martin Luther King is as bad as the motherfuckers who set dogs on him. He's as bad as those people. Fighting hate is as bad as hate.
Right.
And what's particularly telling is that 70% of Republicans believe what he said was proper. They believe it,
really?
And they still support him. That's not me, that's them. So you can't accept something and not be permeated with it.
Right. Well, a lot of people did step away from Trump after that.
Not a lot. Six senators denounced him. Six.
Okay. I mean, we live in a pretty interesting world where, the Bushes is considered the anti-racist.
Right.
And Trump is considered
when a nigga miss Bush, you shit is fucked up.
Right. Everyone's looking at Bush now like, I don't think we had it that
He wasn't so bad. This dude, and when people pretend like they know this whole thing, like you remember the whole idea, the birther thing was about race. The whole idea that we want Obamacare to go. When the black guy did it, now when that Obamacare was really gonna go, poor white people showed up. If you voted for Trump and you have a pre-existing condition like type 2 diabetes, you hate niggas more than you like your feet. Like, good luck hopping around that Make America Great rally on one leg. At least you the international hopscotch champion. I don't know that because they were so hateful of this. Even now, they hated the Kenyans so much they let the Kremlin take over our government. Russia being involved in our government, they picked our president. They were influential in picking the guy. That's like letting your ex-wife who hates you pick your new wife.
Well, you said that Obama is what we aspire to be, but Trump is who we are.
Obama is aspirational, and I think that one of the reasons Trump won is because we thought we were much further along than we are. Obama was what we aspired to be. Trump is what we are. Obama is hopeful. Trump is representative of white supremacists. And I don't think it's not unfair to say that a man who actually argued that protesters and Nazis were morally equivalent. That's racism to me. We live in a country right now. They recently proposed putting Harriet Tubman on the front of the $20 bill, but they want to leave Andrew Jackson on the back. So you have a slave on the front and a slave owner on the back. So even when niggas making the money, we still got to supervise.
A slave on the front and a slave owner on the back.
And that's the American, that is the equivalent of the Missouri Compromise for everybody. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. So even right now, the elections have been decided. The whole electoral college, we gave people who lost some shit so they would feel less inferior. We gave them more power than they actually deserve because we didn't want them to feel bad. And they've been fucking America ever since.
I mean, what did you think when Trump equated, General E. Lee to Robert E. Lee to Washington and Jefferson?
Well, Washington and Jefferson never took up arms against the Republic. They owned slaves,
right,
but they never took up arms against the United States of America. And then, if you don't want those statues, don't want those statues to come down, don't lose. You fucking lost. When do losers get a trophy? How the fuck losers get a trophy? When you lose, you go home and tell your daddy you lost. You don't get a fucking trophy for losing. You lost. Every time you see one of those a Confederate flag, it is a trophy to a motherfucker that got his ass whipped. And he still gets a trophy.
Right. Killer Mike actually came out with some T-shirts that had like the Confederate flag 0 and the American flag 1. It was like a scoreboard.
Right. We pretend like, come on now. You lost. And if they're going to keep those monuments, they should if you want them, put them in your backyard. Or put them in all black and Mexican neighborhoods and let them put graffiti all over it. Puppet was here. That'd be hilarious to me.
You and Lupe have gone back and forth a couple times about him not voting.
One time. I think that Lupe Fiasco, Killer Mike, these cats have all made assertions that it doesn't count. The vote doesn't count. They're all kind of the same thing. And I remember particularly in this last election cycle, they were talking about how, basically you should vote and they're not the same thing and they're both the two sides of the same coin. Does it feel that way? Can anybody make the reasonable argument that they're morally equivalent? That Trump and Clinton are morally equivalent? They can't.
Well, I mean, me and Scarface had a conversation about this, after the election. And the one thing he said was that he doesn't think black people really had a dog in the fight. Because if you look at Hillary Clinton and you look at what her husband did,
I think that once we had a justice system that put moratoriums on brutal police departments. We had a justice system that was trying to reduce mandatory sentencing. We had a justice system that all of a sudden was making marijuana legal to decriminalize marijuana, and a large percentage of the black men in prison are in prison for marijuana. We had a justice system that wasn't looking into whether there was discrimination against white kids on college campuses, In other words, that stopped them from being admitted. So you tell me, is that the same or not? You think that
Well,
would be happening under another administration?
You're talking about the Obama administration.
No, I'm talking about how
the Clinton administration.
Well, yeah. Here's the thing. But she ain't him. So she was his wife. That's just like dope dealers' wives don't go to jail for what they do. They don't. So that would be like everything I've done, putting that label on my wife. That's my wife. She wasn't running the government. She wasn't a member of government. She wasn't an elected official. She was his wife. So to use that to qualify the fact that her and Trump were morally equivalent is why we're in the same situation right now.
Well, she was the first lady.
Sure.
And
so
it seemed like the two of them were intellectual equals. So when you look at, for example, so I mean, like, for example, like I would assume that you and your wife come up with important decisions together.
No.
Right?
No.
Never?
I think that my wife tells me what we need to spend to make her happy in terms of her house, but other decisions I make.
Okay.
I don't think,
Okay.
no,
I mean,
we're not collaborating. My wife don't write my HBO special. She doesn't write my jokes for me. She doesn't tell me what to think. So I think that you can't suspend that knowledge and then apply it to somewhere else. Do you think that Ivanka Trump is telling Trump to say the dumb shit he says? You think that she's
you're talking about Melania?
Melania Trump is involved in policy. You think she's involved in pitching the Muslim ban? So you can't suspend it for one person and not do it for another. I don't understand how that works. If I sue a doctor for malpractice, he may talk to his wife about it all the time, but he's the guy I went to.
Right, except that when you look at Hillary Clinton and the super predator comments and so forth, it
Sure.
seems like her and Bill were equivalent at a certain point.
Yeah, sure. And there's no debating that. No, I'm not gonna moralize or equivocate who did what to who. But I will say there were a lot of black leaders and congressmen and elected officials that felt exactly the same way. Those laws and bills. Look, one of the easiest way to get look, black people go to jail at a rate of we go to jail at a high rate. Black jury send them to jail. So you can't, and all those times when black people were getting convicted and going to jail in large numbers, you can't say just that white people did it. Black people sat on juries and heard the evidence and still judged a certain way. And you can't have it both ways. You got to be able to say that we're involved in the process or we're not. Did they commit all those crimes in non-urban areas, in rural areas, or were they being tried by juries of their peers? So all of a sudden, no one was responsible from our community for helping those large numbers of black men go to jail. There's culpability on our side too, in terms of, not our side, because I wasn't an elected official, but elected officials that sign those bills and lobby for them are equally as responsible. And you don't get to pretend like you're not.
Right, but under Clinton, the laws were changed in a certain type of way.
Absolutely.
That was giving, that was giving sentences for crack that was like 40 times
You're absolutely
for the
right.
equivalent of cocaine.
That's right.
Which was obviously targeted towards black communities.
You're
So you
absolutely
essentially had a whole generation of black men get, put in jail partially.
Absolutely right.
Because of these laws. There were, getting.
And who was the
20
president that
years
did-
for a bag of crack.
You're
is
absolutely
ridiculous.
right. And what was his name?
Bill Clinton.
Right. You can't tell me that she influenced him to do that, but when she tried to get health care, that got him to lose. That made him lose the Congress. You blame what people successfully did was blamed his woman for the shit he did. Where I'm from, a wife can't even testify against her husband. She can't even, if she's married to him, she can't even tell the shit he did, but she can be indicted for the shit he did. Do you believe that Bernie Madoff's wife is responsible for what he did?
No, you're right. She's still out.
Do you? That's the thing. You successfully went, well, she's a Clinton, she did it, they were married, it's the same thing.
I don't know. I mean, I look at a lot of power couples, and I see a lot of men get to certain positions because of the women around.
Sure.
Them. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. If the indictment come down, she going to jail too? If he got indicted for Travelgate, or did she get impeached too with the? Did she help fuck Monica too? Did she? I mean,
I feel.
I don't get. These unreasonable arguments that people make. Yes, absolutely. Under that administration, you're absolutely right. And if she were president, I'd have a different argument. But there is no way that I can equate what he did to what she did.
OJ's getting out.
Yeah. Oh, this is the thing I don't understand. R. Kelly, people are saying he kidnapped people. People are saying Usher gave people herpes. And OJ's getting probation. He had the best week of any nigga I know. Who'd have thought everybody wanted to be, it's better to be OJ than Usher? Who'd have thought that?
OJ's an interesting case because he gets found not guilty over the murder trial.
Sure.
And then he gets given a sentence for trying to steal stuff back that I know people that have killed people that don't get those type of sentences.
Right. He went to jail.
It was like what, 35 years?
Yeah. He got a murder charge for a burglary is what he got.
How did you feel when you heard that OJ's getting out?
I felt like he should have got out for that. If you didn't get him for the shit you really wanted him for, it's like this. When you have a dog and that dog pisses on the floor, if you don't see him do it, you ain't supposed to hit him because you're not punishing him for what he did. You're not punishing him for what he saw. That's revenge. That's not corrective punishment. That's the judicial system. The whole penal system is about corrective measures. It's about rehabilitation. If that dog pees on the ground and I don't see it and I can't prove it and I can't make it, then he gets to pass. He got away with the murder. And I think that every time he did, I think that had I been in the position what I know now and the way I see things now, I would have had a different kind of outlook of that. But he got away with it. He did it. Then you put him in jail. You put OJ in jail for the same shit he stole that California said was legally his and gave back to him years ago. Right. And that's the thing. When black men win playing by the rules, then they change the rules. OJ and Obama really had the same effect on America. These rules ain't working, we better do something different.
Okay, so what did they do to Obama?
The whole everything he did was wrong. He turned the country around. We have to change the way we vote. These people are voting too much, and we have to make it harder to vote and more restrictive. All those laws, all those voter ID laws, what do you think they came about as a result of? Because the nigga won, and he wasn't supposed to.
Well, Obama won twice.
That's right. So but the whole idea of voter registration law, there have been 12. There have been hundreds of millions of votes cast. Probably less than 100 cases of voter fraud. But you changed the entire voting system, because you can't believe that you got beat in the legal way according to the system you set up. Trump
Obama won by a sizable portion.
That's right.
Sizable margin both times.
Yeah. And then they had to make sure, they're like, you know what, we're gonna change the voter ID laws because there had to be some way is it my misperception, or were there more voter ID laws introduced in the last 7-8 years than had at any time in the last 30? Because somebody won that wasn't supposed to.
Right. I mean, I never thought I'd see a black president in my lifetime. If you would have asked me 20 years ago.
Me neither. And then what galls me is, people will say, like Trump will say, we'll never see a black president again because Obama. In that case, we had 2 shitty white presidents in a row. Ain't nobody, like 2. Like, Bush is less shitty than, slightly less shitty than Trump, but 2 dudes who shouldn't be president that were.
Yeah. I mean,
he left with the highest approval rating.
Bush left.
If any two-term, him and Clinton, respectively, have the highest two-term approval ratings of any presidents in modern history. But yet, they were horrible. They fucked up. Obama was a fucked up president. You got literally almost half of his approval rating when he left right now, and he's bad. Obamacare had its problems, and he's bad. But you can't repeal it, even though you got majorities in the Senate, and he's bad. The economy that you brag about right now, the jobs you've created right now, were not even on the pace with Clinton, Bush, or Obama.
Well, I mean, try to take credit for the economy. The economy's been really at an upward
That's right.
streak since about
That's- so-
2009, 2010.
Shut up with that. And so people wanted a great white hope. Like they wanted somebody to tell them that somebody was to blame. They really do. In America, you can work if you do two things. If you can do something some people won't do, or if you can do something they can't. Poor brown people do our physical labor. Poor brown people do our intellectual labor. So if you can't pick a strawberry and you can't write an app, what the fuck are you gonna do? I guess you better rap or tell a joke or dunk.
You're boycotting the NFL
I am.
over Kaepernick.
I am.
Explain why.
And because I think that a league that has allowed murderers, wife beaters, drug addicts, dog killers back in the league and deny somebody for standing on principle has no moral authority to kind of have to weigh in like that. A public that would accept those kind of miscreants back in, but won't accept the principled man is somebody I can't be in league with. I can't understand it. Ray Lewis was accused of a double murder. This dude went on trial. The suit he wore came up missing, and he got off. That's good. But you, after that, you do the same shit OJ did. Shut up. So I got a dude who killed dogs and a dude who got away, who was tried with murder, telling a motherfucker whose only position was people should be treated fair, and he's treated like the pariah? And that's fair? I won't watch a league like that. I want to watch a league till he gets a fair. Ben Roethlisberger accused of sexual assaults. He's still in the league. We had a dude that killed somebody drunk driving. He's still in the league. Plexico Burris shot himself and got back in the league. What are you talking about? He shot himself in the knee that Colin was kneeling on, and he's still in the league.
Yeah, that was crazy. I remember when that happened.
You're more upset, a nation that would be more upset at men who have done these types of things, but not, more upset less upset with men who've done these type of things, and more angry with a man who took a principled stand. What does that say?
Well, recently you responded to Des Bryant about we are not morally inferior.
When people say black on black crime, 90% of black people kill black people. That's true. 87% of white people kill white people. Asians kill Asians. Latin kill Latin. Husbands kill wives. Wives kill husbands. That's about proximity. If something happened to you, who would they look at? If something happened to you or somebody in your family, they would look where first? The people in his proximity, right? The people who are closest to him. The people, you always hurt the one you love. We've heard all these things. But they act as if, because it happens to us, you take any group of people, you put them in a position where their schools are underfunded, violence is on the rise, they have no opportunity, no hope, but you give them alcohol, drugs, and guns. What do you think's gonna happen? What do you think? But they act like it's a moral failing. You know why Des Bryant made the point black people have done more harm to him than other people? You know why? Because you live around black people.
Well, he said I have a family to feed. That was the reason why he wasn't speaking.
I think so did Muhammad Ali.
Right.
So did Muhammad Ali. So did Colin Kaepernick. So did Kurt Flood in baseball. So you want to eat. You think you're the only one with a family to feed? Now, I'm not saying that it has to be anybody's fight, and you have to take a stand you don't believe in. But if you believe it and you're silent, you're saying yes, you're acquiescing. You are tantamount to giving them permission to do what they do. Silence, people have been so silent in America that we've gotten away with far too much. Silence is as deafening as shouts.
I agree.
Because tomorrow, if they want, and it's not, to me, it's not a question of this or that. You can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. If the league said, if black people in the league said, this has to happen or we won't do this, something would happen. Because a bunch of people said we won't watch if this man plays. They had to ask the sponsors who were responding to a public. Well, imagine if black people say we won't do this if you won't play. Now I can't tell people what to do, but until Colin Kaepernick is a fair chance, my DirecTV, I won't watch TV in a hotel or a restaurant. I won't mention the scores because I think it's morally deplorable to take that position on a man who took a principled stand. And any dude who argues for the establishment that would allow that is a sorry motherfucker to me.
Right, because Mike Vick spoke out against him as well.
Mike Vick got a chance to resume his career after he killed dogs. And he almost won the MVP. When you're in that position, you should understand that it's not your words, it's grace you got. And you should extend that to other people. You got grace. Whatever power that you believe in, whoever you pray to, gave you grace. And you did it so well that you almost, if Tom Brady doesn't have the exemplary year, he's the MVP. How dare you pretend like you don't understand what that is? And you shitting on a man who only wanted to make sure that your kids and nephews and uncles and nieces and daughters don't get slain in the streets with nobody about to account for it? Ugh.
I mean, you have kids. You have, how many boys?
I have one boy and two daughters. Well, one son and two daughters.
Okay. I mean, you've talked about your fear of your kids dealing with the police.
Sure. My son is 28. He has a learning disability. He has Asperger's syndrome. And he's physically fit. He's in Krav Maga. So imagine a child. Do you know that the fastest way to get killed by the police is if you're mentally disturbed or emotionally disturbed? So when somebody calls the police to deal with somebody who's acting erratic, they don't call because they want them killed. They want help. But they get killed instead. Now, I'm not saying that the onus is all on the police because they're not, I don't think they're given the tools they need. There shouldn't be all things to all people. But when I call you to help me with to help me with an erratic loved one, it shouldn't be at the end of a bullet. And I got a child, who is, on the higher end of the spectrum. But if he don't know your commands, or if he looks disobedient, he can die. And somebody says that's okay. No. So if you're mad at Colin Kaepernick but never looked at what he was championing, the cause he was mad at, then I think you're a hypocrite. If you're more mad at Colin Kaepernick for the stance he took, you're more mad at Colin Kaepernick than you are. If you're more mad at Kevin Durant for saying he wouldn't go see the president, and you are the president for not going to Heather Heyer's funeral, then you're a fucking hypocrite.
Right. I guess the Warriors aren't going to the White House.
But why wouldn't they? I bet you what? A lot of niggas from Oakland ain't going to the White House either. It's just, it's so morally repugnant that the things that we allow, the things that we hold sacred, and the things that we pretend, we can't be a nation of laws and mores and norms and have one thing be considered aberrant behavior, but accept the other one.
I mean, have you yourself had situations with the police?
Who hasn't? Who hasn't?
What was your worst situation?
The worst situation when I was 9 years old, the police came and they were looking for these dudes in my neighborhood, so they told us to put our hands on the car, and back then the engines ran hot, so I was like, it's hot, it's hot. He said, I'm a 9-year-old boy. He said, if you take your hand off that, it was the Firestone Sheriff Department. He said, in Los Angeles, he said, if you take your hand off that hood one more time, I'm gonna blow your fucking head off. I'm a boy. I watched a kid named Chrissy, man. These cats used to always go back. The police was always fucking with us. So Chrissy is a kid. He tells me, he said, if you take that gun and that badge off, I'll beat the shit out of you. And that dude did it, and he beat the shit out of him. And to us, it was like the fucking Olympics. And 10 days later, he was dead in a dumpster. So I've watched them do what they do. I've watched and seen what happened to him.
So you think the police killed him in revenge?
No, I don't think the police killed him in revenge. Yes, of course I do. Of course I do.
Yeah.
Of course I do. Now, I can't prove it. Of course I do. I'm watching people get beaten and demoralized and dehumanized. Now, I watch a lot of people do bad shit. And what people say, well, it's black on black crime. That would mean that just because some other black guy did it, we're all the same. All of us are the same. Well, of course the police are scared. It's black on black crime. Black people commit crimes. That would imply that all of us are alike. If I said all white people are racist, that you wouldn't accept. What you're doing is saying it's okay to do these things to these people because somebody else that looked like them did it. Then why isn't the same true for you?
Well, you lobbied the EPA to declare black men as an endangered species.
I did. But now I've given that fight up.
You've given that up?
No, now I want black men to get the same protections as animals that's legal for you to kill. Like, I think if you get we should get the same protections as animals you can hunt. You can't kill, you can only bag so many a year, you can't kill the females, you can't kill the juveniles, you can't kill them next to their home, you can't bait them, you can't shoot them from a moving car, you can't do it on Sundays. And if you do something, if you break into those rules, it's hunters that turn you in. Wardens are, the people that they're the concern. They care more about conserving people. If you hurt too many females, or you can't shoot too many females, or you shoot too many juveniles, you can get a fine. It's a penalty. You get in trouble for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at the argument of the police killing black men,
Sure.
and then people say, well, but look at all the black men who kill black men.
But those black men go to jail.
Right, and that's my point. If you had a videotape of two civilians choking the other, killing them, shooting them at point blank range, that gets shown to the jury, and it's pretty much an open and shut case.
That's you made a valid point, because prosecutions show tapes of potential suspects doing things all the time. That's enough to convict. But if you show a video of a cop doing something, we don't know what he did before, and we don't know what precipitated this, and we don't know what happened before. The tape is good enough. One gets a presumption of guilt, and one gets a presumption of innocence. I would submit that in America, there's never been a black man killed that society was so abhorred by that they changed things, that they were so angry about and so hurt by they changed things.
I mean, I would say Emmett Till.
No, nothing changed.
No?
No.
Nothing changed?
No. People are looking at the eclipse. Like today, it only happens, it's rare, it only happens once in a lifetime. If I want to see something that only happens once in a lifetime, I'll look at the conviction of a police officer for killing a black man. I'll look at justice. That's just as rare as an eclipse. What the fuck I don't gotta look in the sky. I look in the courtroom.
Well, I mean, Emmett Till happened in a time where those type of images
You're a
weren't
journalist, so
really
you know Emmett Till.
circulated.
You're a journalist, so you know Emmett Till. I'm a black man, so I know Emmett Till. Most of society had no idea what you're talking about, so it could not have had the impact that you're espousing. It couldn't have.
Yeah. At the time, though, like this was the
Niggas
30s,
still died.
40s, something like that.
People still got killed. People still got lynched. People still. I wonder if we looked at Emmett Till and look from that time on to whenever people think we got reasonable. I wonder how many black people died in brutal ways that society wasn't abhorred by.
Yeah. Well, but I think
Castillo
the
just
imagery
got
of it, I think, affected society on a level that it hasn't.
I don't think
before.
it did.
Yeah, I mean, the fact when you look at that whole situation, the fact that his mother, considering the condition of her son, did an open casket funeral and allowed everyone to take pictures of that. I mean, like, you as a parent, can you just imagine that?
You know what's so funny? You bring up Emmett Till. Now let me ask you an honest question.
Okay.
America's history is rife with brutalized black bodies, with people being hung, burned, genitals cut off, and that didn't change them. So why would Emmett Till's picture make them feel any different? They used to have picnics while they burned, hung, cut the genitals off of black people, and they'd have picnics around them. People have pictures of that. So Emmett Till was the thing that finally went, oh, this is too far? No. I don't buy that argument.
Right, and ultimately, I believe in the trial, weren't they found not guilty or something like that? Like, it was...
The woman that just came out and said, of course, no.
Yeah. The woman said that it wasn't even true.
Listen, we watched Freddie Gray die. We watched Philando Castile die. We watched Alton Sterling die. We watched the man die in Oklahoma. So Emmett Till made people be so appalled by the level of violence that somebody's being visited with that they stop it.
Yeah, I feel you.
I just, maybe it's true, but I bet the empirical data would prove otherwise.
Right. I mean, because I don't think that when people look at what's been happening with Eric Garner and Philando Castile and so forth, like, that's been happening all the time. People just have cameras now.
Yeah.
Were you living in LA during the Rodney King riots?
Of course.
That happened, and it was so rare for someone to even have a video camera back then, much less having a video camera and to tape that actual incident.
People saw that tape, and the same brutalization they saw one man's brutalizer is another man's hero. So to your point, if our psyches have been indelibly changed by what happened to Emmett Till, black men being brutalized wouldn't be so commonplace and so accepted. Those dualities could not exist.
I mean, what do you think at this point could actually improve things?
I think that people got to do what the brochure says. I think that America, by and large, has never seen a black man die, and it was so upsetting that they decided that enough was enough. They've never seen it. And they need to. They tell me why it happens, or how they can understand how it happens, or maybe somebody else, or we don't know. When is this country going to get so appalled by a level of brutalization that they can no longer abide it?
Right, because if you look at, for example, like the Jean Benet situation,
Yeah.
right? This is like a little blonde girl who got killed, 10,
Yeah.
20
It
years
had to be
ago?
almost 20-some years ago, 25 years ago now, yeah.
Okay. People still care about that murder. Like, there's new documentaries coming out about that.
Sure.
I remember, me and Lord Jamar had an interview recently, and he was saying how when the OJ thing happened, people were so upset because Nicole Simpson was like the poster child for white beauty. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You've said that every time a comic apologizes, every time somebody apologizes for telling a joke, a comedian loses his balls.
Yeah. My obligation is not to make you feel comfortable. My obligation is to be clear. What you do with that is up to you. My obligation is not to fit into a societal norm or to be a part of this kind of politically incorrect society or this genteel society. My job is to call it like I see it. That's like, if I'm a mirror, it's like a fat dude getting mad at the mirror for telling me he's fat.
Well, you defended Kathy Griffin when she held up the decapitated Trump head.
Sure, it's art. I defended John Rocker for saying what he said. I defended, Don Imus for saying what he said. To me, I'm a proponent of free speech. Now, that doesn't necessarily, I most certainly am opposed to some of the things I hear, but I can't believe in free speech only when somebody's saying something I dig.
Okay, what about Bill Maher when he called himself a house N-word?
I thought it was a joke, and I think that people have learned to be offended on cue. And I heard a bunch of people, if Bill Maher should lose his job. If every white man that said nigger lost their job, tomorrow nothing would be open.
I mean, you use the N-word.
I do.
In your regular speech.
Sure.
I never use it.
I can't believe that you've never used the N-word. I can't believe that.
I've never used it.
Never one time in your life.
As a kid in elementary school, did I possibly use it? Possibly.
School. Yeah, and I think that any white person that tells you they've never said nigga is a lie, and I think that that's one of the points that we get to pretend to make these equivocations. I guarantee you, a lot of people hear it at family reunions, or they hear it at holiday parties, or they hear it around their drunk uncles or their drunk aunts, and they don't walk out and stream out and protest. The same shit they pretend to be offended by out loud, they're not offended around their dinner table. So we need to kind of stop bullshitting. I think the word nigga is not as offensive as the way people treat it. The most offensive words in the language to me are black on black crime. Black on black crime have gotten a lot more niggas killed than the word nigga has.
With as loaded as the word is, with the history behind the word, with the, the type of power, because
it only has the power you give it, right?
Right. I mean, because if you talk about, like, let's just say a white man and a black man get into an argument.
Sure.
The white man could always pull out that card.
Sure.
And knows that he can get a reaction out of the other person. You call a white guy a cracker, you might not get a reaction.
That's the problem. Instead of trying to abolish nigga, we need to have a word that's just as offensive to them. Like when they say nigga, I should say I fucked your daughter. Like that stuff like that. You know what I mean? I think I'm not a proponent of trying to kill free speech on any level. I'm really not. So maybe I'm probably the wrong person to ask, but nigga has less power over me than other words like you got a rash, that ain't, you're fired, she's pregnant. There's a lot of other words that have a lot more impact on me than that nigga.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you don't really realize how racist America is until you leave the country. I've been to Africa. I remember the first time I went to Senegal, and I got to walk around and I'm interacting with the Senegalese people. And I realized that there wasn't this sort of tension that I always sort of kind of felt in America. And it started to kind of dawn on me like, oh, okay, this is an American thing. This is not a human thing. Like people of different races and nationalities naturally just get along. Yeah. But there's a system in place in America that's telling people not to.
Well, there's a system in place. Like, what's funny? When people go, Southern hospitality. Like, you gave us sweet tea and nigga. So we get to make these notions of what people are. But the evidence and history tell us that that's not true. Southern hospitality, you can't say things like Southern hospitality just because you're sweet. You give us sweet tea and peach cobbler. You gave us nigga too. The way, like, everybody fucked around with racism. America brought it to a fine boil. When you say the only thing we built in America that lasted as long, the nigga is our testament. Niggas lasted longer than Sears and Roebuck, than Kodak. And it's still your father's nigga. It's not the same. It's not even different. It's still, now, I mean, we may use it different. Black people may use it in albums and music they didn't use it in before, but still, we've always had the same thing, and it still works. Just name me anything that's as old as nigga that still works the way it originally intended. That's you can't pick anything that doesn't.
I mean, when you look at the level of brutality behind slavery in America.
Sure.
You look at how blacks were bred like animals.
Yes.
Like literally bred. Like you would, okay, here's a large female, here's a large male, have at it.
Right.
Or get beat.
And now we got the Lakers.
Like, you know what I mean? Like
and now we got the Lakers. So, but people get to tell themselves the story. Do you remember, I think around the 4th of July, NBC had a story that said they found Sally Hemings, Thomas Jefferson's mistress. They found her apartment. Thomas Jefferson didn't have a mistress. He had a black woman he owned that he could fuck and rape and brutalize anytime he wanted to. And she didn't have an apartment. So even the stories we tell each other are so benign and so genteel and so lyrical, it's almost whimsical. Thomas Jefferson he owned his children. Don't tell me how great he was. The motherfucker owned his children. He raped the bride and kept the children. And didn't even free them. So stop. So when people tell me how it isn't as bad and we don't, it's because they allow themselves to hear this siren song of bullshit. Just because they own our money doesn't mean they didn't do bullshit. But that actually was the story. You look that up. It said they found Thomas Jefferson's mistress, Sally Hemings' apartment. He didn't have a mistress. He had a woman who he sexually assaulted the length of her life.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Thomas Jefferson was a major slaveholder.
Yeah. Yeah. So our history is what? Bridges, schools, airport. So it's just like racism in America is like this. You ever heard of somebody who had a disease or maybe an injury? Like somebody gets shot and they removing the bullet would do more damage than leaving it there. So you just kind of leave the bullet there. Or some people will have cancer, but it's inoperable because trying to remove the cancer is just as deadly. That's what racism is here. It's so entwined, so ingrained, so enmeshed in the Americana that removing it would kill the host.
You think if you removed, hold on.
If you remove holidays, you have to get rid of Thanksgiving. You'd have to get rid of Columbus Day. You'd have to get rid of money, schools, bridges, holidays, parks. You have to wipe the slate clean. And you think that people have a fight about removing a fucking monument to a Confederate? Try telling them Columbus didn't discover America. It's so ingrained, it's so a part of who we are, that removing it would be deadly to the host.
You heard Jay-Z's new album?
I haven't.
444?
I haven't yet. No.
You haven't?
No, not yet. But I hear spectacular things about it.
So a lot of the criticism was the holding money, like the money phone thing. And there was a strong push for generational wealth and multi-generational wealth.
Sure.
And so forth. And there's a certain level of pushback to that. Like a lot of rappers were like, fuck this, we're still gonna hold the money phone. And when I talk to people about investing money and long-term plans for money, very few people, like in terms of like my readers and so forth, very few people really get it.
No. Well, how many people have institutional wealth? How many people have generational wealth? They don't. Most 1% of the population does.
Right. I mean, like you yourself are in a position where your kids can continue to spend the money that you make during your lifetime.
Yes. Yes.
How important is that for you to establish that, or do you feel like your kids should kind of be on their own the way you were?
What I believe I've done is to provide them with opportunities. What I believe I owe them and still owe them is a level of protection and a level of opportunity that I hadn't previously had experience with. But like now they got these millennials now, millennials are 20, 30 years old, the most educated generation that ever existed. I have 3 millennials living home with me. I pay for all of them to graduate from college. I pay for my wife to graduate from college. I got a GED, but I'm the only one working. So, I had motherfuckers graduate from USC and go back to their old room. So, you know what I'm saying? So, I think that it's a generational thing, but what I think I have instilled, I think they have a depth and a breadth and an acceptance and a kind of awareness of society that I don't and things that I don't. But I hope that I've given them, I hope that they'll never be poor. I hope that they'll never know what I've known. But in terms of being able to, a legacy where, I wouldn't do that no matter what, because I think that when I was growing up, I wouldn't let my kids eat lobster because I wanted them to be able to appreciate it. I would only buy them certain kind of cars because I want the first time they did it. I didn't want them to believe that they were entitled to it. I want them to have to reach for things. And so I think but even that's artificial. So I hope I've done, I'll wait till the book come out to decide what I've done.
Right, I mean, because there's always the balancing act between, what's really the difference between a trust fund and welfare.
Right.
It's kind of equivalent to it.
It is. But trust funds are a lot better than welfare, let me tell you that. I mean, I never had a trust fund, but I have had welfare, and anything would be better than that. I'm just,
We just lost Dick Gregory.
Yeah.
I'd actually posted up the DMs. Dick Gregory actually wanted to do an interview with us, and we just couldn't manage to get it put together. And then, we just learned about the passing. An incredible voice.
Yeah.
Did you guys know each other?
Yeah. I think sometimes you do all that you were supposed to do, and you leave. and I think he was the voice of a conscience, of a movement, of a nation to some degree, and I think he did all he could. And I think at least my art form is all the better for it. And I'm glad I got to know him, and I'm glad I got to see the way he weaved humor with social justice. I think Dick Gregory and Mark Twain are among my favorite comedians, my favorite humorists.
Wait, Dick Gregory and Mark Twain.
Yeah.
Well, why Mark Twain?
Because I think Mark Twain did the exact same thing Dick Gregory did. I think that they use their art and humor to illustrate some of the human condition.
I mean, when you look at the greatest stand-up comedians, like who would be in your top three, except for yourself?
George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Red Fox, and a cat named Robin Harris, to me.
So Robin Harris and Red Fox are tied.
Yeah, kind of.
Eddie Murphy's not on the list.
Yeah, but I mean, Eddie Murphy had a skill set I couldn't touch, so it's just, I'm talking about the guys. I'm talking about the guys that cat had more talent, like the most talented human being I've ever seen on stage. When I was on stage to this day, the most talented person I've ever seen is Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx was so talented when we started doing comedy together. I remember watching him at the Comedy Act Theater, and he was so talented, and I turned, I forgot who it was, and I go, it's fucking unfair that this motherfucker's this talented. And I was mad. I was mad. I said, it's so unfair. But that was the most, that was the most talent I'd ever seen in one person on stage that long. But I'm talking about 30, 40 years, and cats doing it for a long time. The greatest comedians to me are the ones I just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, George Carlin, it seems like all those guys sort of had a level of comedy that was so left field from what everyone else was doing at the time.
Yeah.
You know, like when
Bruce
Richard
was
Pryor
another
came
one.
along, it was like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah. Like, I think when you look at even like the way things changed, like Richard Pryor was integral in the way that black people were seen by society. Bill Cosby was integral in the way black people are seen by society. Ellen was integral in the way gay people and transgender are seen by society. It's been humor that's led us all this way. I mean, like when people say black people don't like gay people, black people are jealous of gay people. That it took hundreds of years, people dying and being lynched and choked and dogs set on a water hose, and then finally things started to change. Ellen, Glee, and Will and Grace started to change stuff almost immediately. So it feels like their ascent was not as turbulent as ours. Not to disrespect that, but it just seems like ours was fraught with a little more danger. So I think it's not hate, it's jealousy. I think people, they just think, damn, I wish it would have been as easy for us.
well, I mean, Ellen is a lesbian, and she definitely reached especially with her show, she reached a pretty high level. But I don't know of any male gay comedians.
No, I'm not talking
of that caliber.
No, not that. People's ability to laugh and be entertained, and to see themselves, and so I think that nobody's done that for anything like comedy has. Whether it's somebody doing it from a stage or somebody doing it from a television show or a movie, no one's done it like that or been able to kind of give the aspirin and orange juice, something you need with something you like comedy, like humor. I mean, the root of humor is and I think it's human, and it's how we relate to each other. And I think that I think comedy has led the way to us becoming more human. I think it's the reason that we evolve. I do.
Comedy is the reason why we evolve.
Oh, absolutely. I think that is the reason we evolve. Huh. Absolutely.
That's interesting. I mean, because if you look at, like, for example, even historically, like with the court jester, he was the only one that was able to tell the king the truth without facing execution.
Amos and Andy. If you look at the longest laugh spread in recorded history, is All in the Family. Sammy Davis Jr. when he kissed Carol O'Connor. The longest laugh spread in history. The longest laugh spread. In other words, people laugh for so long because this white man kissed that black dude kissed this white man. The longest laughing. We've evolved in fits and starts. The whole 70s, the whole 80s, all these stories told in a humorous manner. You know, the Mark Twain doing it. It's the way that we have been able to accept things. Some people would say sport and some people would say music, but all of us aren't capable of athletics. All of us aren't capable of, being musicians. All of us can laugh. All of us. And have laughed and do laugh. Look at the way we changed as a country just from the shit we used to look at. This Bod and All in the Family and MASH. They had a character on MASH called Spear Chucker Jones. The conversations they could have under the auspices of humor that you can't have even now. So I think it's how we have evolved as a country, as human beings.
Right, because music doesn't always have a social message in it.
No. And humor doesn't either. Sometimes it could just be somebody that looks different than you laughing at the same thing you do for different reasons. Laughing is involuntary. Right. You don't mean for it to happen. You don't plan for it. You could want to laugh and not be able to.
Right. I mean, that's sort of the cusp of the whole Dave Chappelle thing where, allegedly, he hasn't really talked about it, but he kind of did talk about it, where he allegedly left the Chappelle show and left a lot of money on the table because he felt like certain white people were laughing at his jokes a little too much.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. It is a great gift to be able to expound on and to give. And how people receive it, I don't feel like it's up to me. And what they're laughing at and why they laugh and how they laugh, I think that's a little bit more control than I care to have or care to be aware of. But I stand by the fact that I think the ability to laugh is the most intrinsically beautiful thing and human thing that we possess.
Right, because when you look at babies laugh.
Yeah, they don't know they laugh and they don't even know why.
Right, they laugh before they could talk.
Yeah, my father never laughed, but when he did laugh, we would stop what we were doing and run inside to see what the fuck he was laughing at, and it was always All in the Family or MASH or Mod or it was always it was always something racially potent or socially potent. It was always something. Black people used to laugh. My mother used to say, bill collector used to call the house and she would laugh and say, I don't have it. They used to tell me, you got to laugh to keep from crying. So I think it had always been imbued in my psyche. I just never knew how it would be applicable.
Now, I love that, man. I mean, like, society has moved along because of the comedians.
Yeah.
More so than the athletes and the musicians. Because, you could be racist and love Michael Jordan.
Sure.
You could be racist and love Michael Jackson. But you can't really be racist and love like a Dave Chappelle.
No.
You see what I'm saying?
You're not
going to listen to him talk
but what you can
for an hour and a half.
Is racist and crack up at Dave Chappelle. It's involuntary. I don't mean to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't plan to do it. Laughter ain't too much different than love. You don't get to decide who you're in love with. You just know you do.
I mean, with all the stand-up shows that you've done, have you ever had racists show up at your shows?
Sure.
What's the most racist thing that's happened at your shows?
Recently I got into it with this guy on Twitter. And I was playing a gig in Hermosa Beach. And he showed up and was heckling racist shit in the background. And it just was hilarious to me. It was just, so they ended up putting him out. And he was shouting shit, and I just thought it was hilarious. I think that there is a purity in comedy and humor that I know I'm involved in and I know this, but that doesn't exist anywhere else. I think there's an honesty that doesn't exist anywhere else. I think you can say things. The reason that we're starting to be less empathic as a society is because now, instead of laughing, you got to tell people when to laugh. When you write an email or a text or a tweet, you put LOL. You give them cues as to what they're supposed to do. You direct them. You might as well have an applause sign that tells people when to laugh. And I think it has dulled our senses that way.
Right, and the type of comedy you could do now is not the type of comedy that you were able to do. I mean, remember Tracy Morgan had to apologize for a joke about killing his gay son.
And I thought that that really became a different thing. He was doing a show for a group of people, I think in Memphis or somewhere in Tennessee. That was their show. Somebody out of context put that up on the air, and the audience didn't complain about it. There was nobody that complained about it. Weeks later, somebody put what he did out of context in the zeitgeist, and people got to see it and make a decision about it.
I mean, what do you think about, in this current climate, and you being a comedian?
Sure.
You can't really make gay jokes anymore.
Why?
Without a certain level of backlash.
I don't get it. I can make any joke. Like today, people got mad. Like there have been 4 United States Navy warships that have crashed in Asia, in Asian waters. And I went, and we say those motherfuckers can't drive. So I just think, we have crashed so much, and the Navy has crashed so much, they're about to get their fucking insurance canceled. So I don't think anything, I just think everything has the potential to be funny and ironic. And I think gay people or black people or women or religion can't be exempt from it.
I mean, do you think there's such thing as a positive stereotype?
I wouldn't mind if I was called Jewish. I don't think that's like if somebody said, "Oh, you have money and I don't think that's a negative stereotype." But I don't think that there are things.
Well, here's the thing, right? So when people say that all Jews are rich, there's an undertone of.
I don't know how I'm sure that.
No, right. I mean, I'll break it down for you though. Like people say all Jews are rich,
right.
But there's an undertone that they actually stole that money.
I wouldn't know that, but I'll take the rich part.
Right.
Take the rich part.
When they, whenever you have a stereotype, there's always an undertone. Like, when they say all Asians are good at math, there is an undertone of.
When all Asians are good at math, I don't get what there are some stereotypes I get and go, I wouldn't be pissed at that. If they.
Okay.
Like when we was a kid and we would go somewhere and there would be an Asian kid, we automatically assumed he knew karate. Now that was fucked up. But the fact that was fucked up. But if you walk into a room right now and you see an Asian kid, you automatically go, that kid is going to set the mathematic curve.
Okay, but there's an implication that they're not creative and all they could do is math. You see what I'm saying?
No.
It always, saying that all blacks are good at sports. There's an implication
if
that
I was,
they
I
may
wouldn't
not be good at
the
other
only
things
reason
except for sports.
I would be
you
mad
see what
at
I'm saying?
that if I was shitty at sports like I am. I wouldn't care. Like there are some things that you can't even. Oh, I can't believe they think all of us are good at sports. I like that. That wouldn't make me mad.
Right, and that's the thing. You're automatically prejudging someone before you actually know anything about them, just based on their appearance.
Right.
And this is why I'm saying, is there such a thing as a good stereotype? Because like I said,
Yes,
you're not good at sports, but
there's
people assume you're good at
stereotype.
sports, and that
if you're good
that
at
sets
sports,
up a certain tone.
You're good at math, you're rich. Those are not horrible stereotypes. They don't get you pulled over and shot by the police. One of them does.
Right. For example, they say Mexicans are hardworking, but when you say that, you're only really talking about manual labor. You're not. If they really were that hardworking, they should be all the CEOs as well, right?
No, because
but they're not.
I don't know anybody who works harder than poor people. I'll tell you what I've never seen. And I grew up in Los Angeles, I have never seen a Mexican cat begging somebody for money. I've never seen it. I've seen them ask for jobs or say, I want to, but I have never seen them ask for money. Now, I don't know what that means. I've never seen it. And I've been around a good little bit. I've never seen a sign. I've seen white dudes do it. I've seen black dudes do it. I've seen women do it. I've never seen a Mexican kid, man, out there with a sign that asks for money. Ever.
Have you ever seen an Asian with a sign?
No, either. I've never seen that either.
See?
No, I've never seen
See?
that either. No, I actually
that's
have.
what I'm saying.
Actually have in the Bay Area. I actually have seen that before. I've seen it before.
Really?
Yes, I have.
I don't think I've ever seen an Asian.
I have.
I mean, because there's certain things that just culturally happen in certain societies. For example, you never really see old Asian people in like old folks' homes
No.
because culturally they take care of their
Right.
parents.
And you very rarely see black people because we'll put a hospital bed in the middle of our living room. That dude, your grandmother will die while you watching TV. I'm not even kidding. So I think culturally you're right, but I think that even if those were stereotypes, I read that book, Whistling Vivaldi. You ever read that book? And it talked about stereotypes and how they exist and all that kind of stuff. I think we pretend to be way more offended by stuff than is necessary. Way more offended.
Or do you think that society in general is just getting less violent and
It's not getting less violent.
It's not getting less violent?
Well, let me ask you, there in the last 10 years, 303,000 Americans were killed by other Americans. That's cool.
Right, I'm not talking about 10 years. I'm talking about 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years.
Look, I don't know about what I read. I know about this. I know that larger cities are getting safer and safer. The threat, violence seems more real now, but obviously, yes, violence,
Yeah.
murder.
When you look at like the Inquisition and not only the number of people they killed, but in the creative ways they invented killing people.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
but they couldn't go into a build. They didn't have the wherewithal to do it like we did. It was more menial. I think that we are. I will give you that by and large, societies are getting safer. Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Societies as a whole, and I'm talking over the last 1,000 years.
Not to the 300,000 people that got killed in the last 10 years, but by and large, societies. I don't know that
Right.
America is the safest society, but by and large, societies are getting safer. Large societies.
Right. Because that's what I'm saying. You even go back 50 or 100 years, interracial marriage was considered illegal. Certain things, level of tolerance, there are negative aspects of it, but the fact that there is a level of sensitivity towards saying certain negative things towards certain groups of people is generally considered unacceptable by society. When you look at what's happening with Trump right now, people are not feeling his rrhetoric. People are not feeling white nationalism in terms of the whole country.
There are things that are not accepted by society. There are things society doesn't pretends not to accept. And he's the answer to that. You would never have a guy who said what he said, grabbed pussies, talked about the Pope, he's done some insane things. And just recently, the fact that he's still president and still is above 30% means somebody accepts him. I think that we don't out and out. We don't say nigga and Jew and kike, and we don't say fag, and we don't do all this shit no more because we have Facebook. So we don't gotta do, like Chris Rock said, there's an app that lets you know if your friends are racist. It's called Facebook, and it's true. We don't say them out loud. We just put an egg avatar up and say vile shit. So no, I think yeah. And every week you'll read about some cop or some executive that says something racist on Facebook and get fucking fired because they think it's just them.
Right.
When you talked about that Debbie Reynolds, I told that on social media. So now people don't even got to be in a room to hear you say it.
When that happens, there is usually a level of outrage behind it. Whereas 50 years ago,
right behind that, if you read the most horrible thing that happens, like what happened in Charlottesville to Heather Heyer, don't read the first 3 lines. Read the 3 lines after that. Read the 3 lines after that. Read the whole thread. And read how people justify the bullshit, the shit they say. I mean, I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic. Read the whole line, and I'm telling you, at best it's 70-30. At best.
So you're saying that a lot of people still, blame her for being out there and so forth?
I think a lot of people have said some insane, horrible things. I think that people, and I don't care how I don't care if it's the people getting shot in those 50 people getting shot in Orlando. I don't care if it's those 9 people getting shot in Charlotte. I don't care how heinous the act is. Read those threads after it. Any Facebook post.
Okay, you're talking about the comments.
Yes.
Ah, right. Right. Well, I mean, for the first time ever, you now have a situation where people could publicly speak anonymously.
That's right.
And say whatever
That's
with
right.
zero repercussions.
So that's,
you know,
when you read any Facebook post and you read the comments and see the shit they say, you realize we were never as far as we pretended to be. Never.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, because you're now, back in the day, if someone said something about you, there was a repercussion, there was a certain fear that person might approach you afterwards. Now you're completely insulated from that.
Yeah, you could put an egg avatar up and be just anonymous and go back to work. Now what they're doing is finding out where you work. And if you and that's what they do. People are posting pictures of people that were at those rallies and they're like, wait a minute, I didn't know you was gonna see me. Yes, motherfucker, I saw you by torchlight. I saw you. Like when you got the same torches from Gilligan's Island, I don't know. You got the same tiki torches I used to keep the bugs off me in the backyard. I didn't know the smell of citronella kept niggas away too. I had no idea that was what's happening.
The one thing about black society that's always I found interesting is that the level of inclusion and the level of forgiveness. Like when the Dylan Roof thing happened, the first thing the families of the survivors did was forgive Dylan Roof.
Yeah.
Which made no sense to me.
Yeah.
Do you feel that black culture in general benefits from being that forgiving, or should they be a little bit more non-forgiving?
Well, I tend to think that our concept of forgiveness is warped because it's based on people who had a lot of shit to be forgiven for, telling us who we should pray to. Like a dude would beat you, sell you, rape you, sell your kids, but tell you about this God who forget. Like when people, so I just think our concept. I think there's this idea. I know for very few black atheists, very few. Even though there's very little evidence that he's where we are. Like I don't think he tends to hang out where we hang out. But I defy you to find large groups of black people that don't believe in him, even though in our lives you haven't seen a lot of evidence of him. And I don't know why that is, but I think it does go back to our experience. There had to be something we believed in that got us through this moment, that got us through this brutality, that helped us be able to live through it. So the fact that you survived meant that maybe this thing, this being, this entity helped me do it. So I'm going to pass that on to my kids.
Right. 'Cause, I mean, I'm essentially an atheist. But when I look at my black friends, very few are atheists. I can't even really name any.
Yeah. I'm like, I haven't seen God where we at a lot of time. So there's but even now, I wouldn't say I very much believe in God. Now I don't know. I don't know how much of that is intrinsically inherent, or how much of it is indoctrination, or how much, but it still gets me through.
Right, because I mean, society in general is becoming more atheistic. I don't know if that's the word.
Yeah, how could it?
Atheistic.
Well, we don't, our society don't believe. Look, we got God on our money. Ain't it the same thing? I mean, a lot of people think we put God on our money, so it's the same. So I think people might think the same thing. I just think there has to be something that I believe in that is greater than my ability to make things happen, that are greater that are past me. And so that's probably why I believe it. And I'm scared to go to hell if I'm wrong. So it's belief and fear.
Right. I mean, because when you look at just the structure of America and the church and the black church, the original aristocrats in black society were the preachers.
Yeah, and still. And still. Well, basketball players too, but yeah, and it's so funny because black people don't like gay people, but many of us wouldn't have a choir director if it wasn't for gay people. Church, black church is the gayest place on the face of the earth. It literally
Really?
is. It is. I don't go, but yeah, I mean, I would imagine. You go to black churches, it's women, children, and gay dudes. It's women who are going to pray for a man, children who got to go with their women, and a lot of dudes who are praying the love of dick out of their hearts. I think that there's, I'm serious. It's just like, it is. It's there, you will hear these things, and it just, you can't argue with what you see.
I mean, when you look at the current environment when it comes to gay people in America, when you look at how Caitlyn Jenner was the Woman of the Year for ESPN,
and it wasn't even she wasn't even a Woman of the Month.
When you look at gay cartoons, I had an interview with Boosie.
They're trying to make everybody fucking gay. That's what I think. They're putting it on our culture. They're putting it everywhere. Gay stuff is everywhere, And I think they're just trying to do it to make a monetary gain. They're not doing it for the gays. They're not really fans of the gays. They're doing it for monetary gain, man. They're trying to make money off these people, man. You got cartoons they have gays on cartoons, like these are kids.
I think that it's ridiculous to believe that I used to watch cartoons that were religiously based. Like we used to watch Davy and Goliath, and that was a Mormon cartoon, and I didn't want to be a Mormon. So hell, I used to watch Schoolhouse Rock, and that didn't make me want to go to school. So I don't, you know what I mean? I still dropped out. I think that people want to say something, but blame it on something else. If that makes you uncomfortable, we always put children in front of us, or somebody's trying to do this. I don't know how you feel about that. I think it's asinine to believe. That's like telling me because somebody buys a video game, they're gonna shoot up, a school, or because somebody goes. I think that we are in control of that. I think that people who say things like that really mean, and I can't know, but people who say things like that mean something else and want something to blame it on.
Okay, so he just basically, you're saying he feels a certain type of way about gay people, and he's expressing that by using.
I think a lot of people do. I think that a lot of people, want to blame it on something.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, but I don't think I never got the whole bathroom thing. I never did. I don't think it's unreasonable. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask a motherfucker with a dick to go to the bathroom with other people with dicks. I don't think that's crazy. I don't think that's insulting. I don't. The only way you go to the bathroom and I know what you're doing is if you're doing something you're not supposed to do. Like, how would I know that you weren't whatever you said you were? How would I know it? If you go to the bathroom and you stand up and pee, I don't know what you did. I don't care. Or if you close the door, I don't know what you did. So how is this even an argument that I don't think it's unreasonable that people say if you got a dick, go to people with people with dicks. But I wouldn't know what you were doing any goddamn way. How would I know? If you're supposed to be a woman and you go to a woman's bathroom and you close the door and you sit down, how the fuck do I know what you were doing? I don't. It's that people want you to know there was something else and you got to accept it. That's the point. In gender neutral bathrooms, go to any fucking music festival. You'll pee any goddamn way. You want to solve this whole shit? Put the whole outhouse they put at music festivals every goddamn way.
So what do you have coming up next?
Well, I'm on my radio show. It's 3 to 7. It's the D.L. Hughley show. We're in 60 markets, so we do that every day. I have my podcast called The Hughley Truth. We do that every Wednesday. I'm touring with Comedy Get Down with George Lopez, Ced the Entertainer, and Eddie Griffith, Charlie Murphy. We just lost him. And
right, you and George Lopez got matching tattoos, right? Yeah. Charlie Murphy tattoos. Uh-huh.
And so it said darkness, and then Charlie had an eclipse today. So I'm pretty sure that's a show that comes out on BET in October. So it's about our tour. And then my third book I'm writing right now called How to Not Get Shot by the Police and Other Helpful Tidbits White People Give Black People.
How to Not Get Shot by the Police and Other Tidbits that White People give Black people.
give black people. You know how they always go, why didn't he just cooperate? And how come you just don't turn your music down? And why don't you just do it? So it's all kind of helpful tidbits like that.
What are the tidbits that white people give black people, aside from how not to get shot by the police?
Just cooperate. Don't wear your hair so loud. Don't name your kids certain things. Don't play your music loud. Don't be angry. Smile. So it's gonna be like a pop-up book. It's gonna have the illustrations. Don't wear a hoodie. So it's gonna be like a how-to book, and it's gonna be funny and just like a coffee table book and pop up. It's like a how to not get shot by the police for dummies. It's kind of hilarious, but it's just kind of anecdotal. It's very funny.
That's what it is. So, what's the one thing that D.L. Hughley wants to be remembered for?
I'll be dead, so I'll be dead. I don't write my byline, and I don't write what people think about me. I think that ultimately, I like the idea that I say what I see, and I'm clear about what I believe. That's all.
What it is.
How anybody else interprets that's not up to me.
Yeah. Well, definitely what you accomplished is incredible.
Thank you, man.
You know, it's always, you know, I think that the greatest part about America is when you look at the most accomplished people in America, most times they're first generation.
Right.
They did it themselves.
Right.
And I think that more important than anything you might say or do, the example that you give for other people to show that, you know something, you could grow up in this type of area in LA and accomplish what a D.L. Hughley did during a lifetime.
That's dope. I really that would be nice. And if there's an afterlife after I'm passed on, I hope I hear somebody say something like that.
Yeah. Well, because I think people really downplay that a lot, is that, you know, setting an example, I feel, is the most important thing. Because when I look at my life and the decisions I've made, I've usually looked at someone and saw the example that they set and say, you know something, I could probably do that.
Right.
You know, when people criticize Obama and say that he wasn't really the first black president and so forth, you can't deny that there's black kids that are growing up today that are looking at Obama and say, hey, I could do that too. Whereas before Obama, I think most black kids growing up and said, you know, and looked at the lineage of American presidents and what they look like and said, okay, I'll probably never become president. Let me think of something.
Well, you know, I don't even think, it's hard to become president when somebody's telling you that you should go to trade school. You know what I mean? Or that you should, it just wasn't even a reality. I think that your example is right on. I think that for some people, it hardened them and inspired them. And for some people, it was the death knell of a mentality. Like, it was like the first black quarterback or the first. So this exclusive club that only we were allowed in, that we were allowed racially, the only ones to be in this club were us, and now all of a sudden that's been breached. That caused a lot of upheaval and turmoil for some people.
Yeah. And it's turmoil that needed to be caused.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
D.L. Hughley, man, definitely appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, man.